In Ukraine, millions of people are once again living without electricity in freezing temperatures after Russia unleashed another round of missile strikes yesterday. Ukraine says it shot down upwards of 70 missiles that were fired, but the Kremlin is claiming it hit all 17 of its targets. Now, this is the backdrop as two Ukrainian parliamentarians come to Ottawa looking for continued support and sharing what they have witnessed on the ground as Russia continues its illegal war campaign. With more, we're now joined by Ivanna Klympush-Tsintsadze, who is a former Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, and Mariya Ionova, who is a Ukrainian Member of Parliament. Welcome to the two of you.
We're grateful for having you having us here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Ivanna, I'm going to begin with you. The Kremlin continues their illegal invasion of Ukraine. We have seen the relentless missile strikes, and not that long ago we also heard from the NATO Secretary General. He accused Russia of weaponizing winter. What have you seen, what have you heard that would support that accusation?
Well, it's our life that we are living through as a horror every single day. Because a lot of families in Ukraine, basically in 19 regions out of 24, are living at this particular moment with at least 12-hour power outages. That means that they are using the winter as a weapon, and they are trying to sow this chaos and frustration and humanitarian disaster into Ukrainian society. But they are definitely not reaching their goals. They are just getting the opposite response because people are more resolute to fight back and to ensure that this aggressor is being kicked out from our land.
Resolute, as you say, as we continue to see this bombardment of Ukrainian infrastructure. Tell us a bit more, Ivanna, if you will, of the kind of suffering people are undergoing right now, because I can't imagine, for example, trying to deal with winter without heating in their homes.
You're very right by asking this question, because it's really, when you are in a warm apartment, in a warm house with electricity, with water supply, it's pretty difficult to imagine how people are adjusting. And people are trying to provide for themselves through generators, but definitely not everyone can allow this thing to be bought. So they are grouping up with families, with friends, and trying to go through this very, very difficult and challenging times together. And obviously the government is also trying, along with the private companies, to repair the grids, to provide for some also temporary relief with generators, but that's not yet covering all the need. So that's why we are also here, because it's part of the priority request right now from Ukrainian society to have more engagement, to have some energy Rammstein, that coordinated effort providing Ukraine with the ability to defend itself and protect its civilian infrastructure through air defense and anti-rocket defense, but also repair the grids so that we can provide people with basic needs to go through this tough winter that is ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. If I may to add that this is the next, it's again war crime against humanity and against civilian population, because he wanted to freeze our children, our elder people, social infrastructure. So it's an evidence that Russia is a state who is financing such terrorist acts, because also not only he's hitting not only our infrastructure, but among this 100 or sometimes more than 100 missiles, they're also hitting maternity houses, hospitals, and private houses. So he's killing civilian people, and that is why it's another case, a more additional case for the International Tribunal.
Mm-hmm. The International Tribunal. Yeah, and Mariya, it's interesting you raise all that, because today, I'm sure you're aware, is a grim anniversary here in Canada, a day when we remember the murder of 14 women at Montreal's École Polytechnique back in 1989. And that's poignant because when you think of the violence inflicted on the women of Ukraine as a result of this illegal invasion, we seem to be hearing more and more stories of crimes, as you said, war crimes, in this case committed against women in the country. Can you tell us about what has been collected, the stories that have been unearthed at this point?
Of course, we will not tell you the exact numbers for today. We have the number of criminal cases which have been already investigated by law enforcement institution, but unfortunately the world will be more shocked when the occupied territories also will be liberated. But it's not only sexual violence, and you know that the youngest who have been raped was 4 years and the eldest 82 years old. So it's with what kind of, if I even cannot name them, people we have all together, I mean the free world. But I also would like to say that it's not only about violence, it's not only about kidnapping, raping and torture, but it's also, we would like to share with you the positive stories about women, because we see women now in armed forces, we see women in territorial defense, we see women business, economic, social services, and also they're staying with their communities. And you know that we have lost a lot of women, the mayors and the chairs of the communities have been killed by Russian soldiers. But anyway, we are all together working, and I think that this is also an asset. Our Ukrainian women, how do they deal with this aggression, acts of war crimes? But we, of course, also need more support from our international friends. But we need also to think about our hostages and prisoners in Russian territory. So we also call not to forget about them, that we have to release them, and Geneva Convention has to be implemented by Russia Federation.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ivanna, it's been suggested by countries like France that a negotiated peace is still possible. Do you agree with that?
You know, I'm very much worried when I hear the calls from France, for example, to think and provide Russia with some security guarantees. So I cannot really understand what exactly has to happen for the final sobering up of all the international community in order to understand what are we standing up against. Ukrainian people, in huge majority, more than 80% at this particular moment, are not supporting any negotiations with the Russian Federation. Any offer of the negotiations that Russia is putting on the table through its media channels is basically a smokescreen in order to regroup and to start yet another attack on Ukraine. So we have to understand that we are dealing with barbarians, with people who do not honor any commitments, any laws, any treaties, any memorandums that they have signed up to by being a country that was supposed to provide security assurances for Ukraine, because Ukraine has given up its third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world back in 1994. So at this point, we do not see any possible negotiated solution. And I think the best negotiator is our armed forces of Ukraine at this particular moment. But we need the backing with more weaponry, with more capability to our armed forces to actually ensure that we are capably further liberating our territories and liberating our people who are waiting there under occupation.
Mm-hmm. Mariya, quickly running out of time, but you know, we heard Ivanna talk about basic needs, military needs. What other message do you want Canadian parliamentarians to know, to hear while you are in Ottawa?
I think that the world has to think about strategy of victory, not of restraining and weaknesses Russia, and to think about security guarantee for Ukraine. And the best security guarantee for Ukraine, it's NATO membership.
Mariya, Ivanna, thank you for the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.